Hello everyone, this is Joanna for you one more time, and today we have somebody special with enormous experience and knowledge in the topic you probably will be very much interested in. So he is journalist, vice chairman of UFO Sweden and vice chairman for the Archive for the Unexplained, author and co-author of numbers of books about UFO. Just to give you a glimpse, little bit of the glimpse of that, UFOs and government, UFOs and cults. Welcome everyone to the show, Clas Svahn. Hi, Clas.
Hi, Joanna. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here and agreeing to share your knowledge and experience with us and your approach to this.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, we are going to start from maybe from the government and UFOs, and you have some documents with you, so that's fantastic. We may be going to show that a little bit. Can you just tell us a little bit what are your most important conclusions from that book? What did you discover?
Well, I've always been interested in, and this is the book, by the way, it's called UFOs and Government, and I co-wrote it together with some other very, very good ufologists around the world. And all of us are very interested in how our governments have been treating the UFO subject through the years. So I have been studying Swedish UFO research from the government point of view from 1930s up till today. Because in the 1930s, there were a very huge flap of UFO observations over Scandinavia. They were called the ghost flyers. And after that, in 1946, there were a second wave called the ghost rockets. And that was even before the term flying saucers or UFOs were even coined. So looking into how the Swedish government have been treating the UFO subject goes way back, and that really interests me.
And how is that? What did you discover? What do you think about it? What were those? Were there real UFOs, or were there also some military equipment checked out, or something we don't know about?
Yeah, it's very important to stress that UFOs is unidentified flying objects. So when we say UFOs, we don't know what they were. And to say that you have seen a UFO, then you must have the case investigated by proper investigators. You cannot just say, oh, I saw a UFO in the sky. Really, you need to get that information to someone who has the skills to try to find a solution for it. And yes, there are quite a lot of UFO observations in the Swedish military archives. But as you also mentioned, of course, many of the observations were from more mundane objects. Like, right now we have the planet Venus in the northwest every evening, very prominent. And in the morning, the planet Jupiter. And people are seeing that now, and they did in the 30s and in the 40s as well, of course. But when you take all that away, you come down to a core of very interesting observations. And what I focused on are the ghost rockets, which are, I think, the most interesting UFO phenomenon you can ever meet. I mean, that is something I've spent so many years trying to solve, and so many people have seen it. And you can see that in the Swedish government files, that is thousands and thousands of reports and observations of those elusive, rocket-like, strange flying objects.
Can you tell us more? What are those? What do you think, or what is the investigation by now showing us? You say about archives of Sweden government. Did they release anything to the public? Because they just released it in American Pentagon, something, and we could see it. But for all this time, everything was as maybe it wasn't clear enough.
No.
What are those?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it took 40 years for the Swedish government to put those files out in the public domain. So it all happened in 1946, and in 1986, me and a fellow researcher at the archives could get all those documents unclassified, so we could read them. But even before then, we started to make interviews with witnesses. I mean, this is now 34 years back, so many of them are gone now. You cannot meet them anymore. But we did that groundwork at that time. So when we got the documents, you can read about, I can give an example. Just one day, July the 19th, 1946, 4 different locations, people, hundreds of people altogether, saw those cigar-shaped objects flying out in the bright sunny sky, crashing down into lakes, straight in front of them. And the Swedish military, they went to those lakes, they tried to find the objects, but they were gone. All they could see were indentations in the bottom of the lake. Something had crashed. They could see water lilies floating on the surface, and huge stones were flown up to on the beach. So something had crashed, and those crashes, they occurred maybe 30 or 40 times during 1946, and they could never solve it. They could never find any trace of those objects. Still a mystery.
Wow. Scientifically, what possibly could happen?
That's a very good question. I mean, the first thing that the Swedish military thought about was that it was from Russia. We always think that everything comes from Russia.
Right.
Sometimes we are right, but not every time. And this time it was impossible to show that the Russians had that kind of military capacity. What they thought was that someone had brought those V-bombs from the Nazi Germany stockpiles after the Second World War, 1945. Those V-bombs, those weapons, to Russia and to the United States. And the Swedish military thought that maybe the Russians had modified those and flown them over Sweden. But we know now they didn't. They didn't do that.
So but they would be visible. Something still would be traceable, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. For during the war, those bombs, sometimes they crashed in Sweden. And at one time it was a crash in the south of Sweden. And they found more than 2 tons, 2,000 kilos of debris. And the ghost rockets, they never left a trace of anything at all. And I also spoke to a Swedish pilot who chased one of those ghost rockets in the air for a couple of minutes before he was outflown by the object, or just vanished into a storm cloud. So I don't know. I don't know really. It's an enigma, really. It's a challenge trying to find the answer.
I have 2 more questions considering this, because you were investigating people who were witnesses. One question is, did you have any problems with interviewing them? Because of course, when I watch anytime American TV show Blue Book Project, they try to cover every time everything. So how was it in Sweden?
No. I mean, in 1946, it was sort of a cover-up. The Swedish military asked the newspapers not to publish exactly where the observations were done, because they didn't want the enemy to know what they knew. But when we approached all those witnesses, I mean, 40 years later, it was not a problem at all. And most of them really remembered all of this vividly, because what they had seen was something completely out of the ordinary. They never ever forgot it. So we did quite a lot of interviews, not only with witnesses, but also with the military, the investigators, and the personnel that were sent to those lakes trying to find the objects.
So they allow it. It was not a problem to interview. They just asked to not put it in a newspaper.
Yeah, in 1946 they asked for it. But after that, they never asked for it anymore.
Okay, they allow you though to write a book.
Yeah, I mean, it's not any secret anymore. I mean, they unclassified those thousands of pages of documents and made it free for everyone to use, to read.
Mm-hmm. So I understand you documented all of those examples, what happened, and still what that really is, scientifically speaking, it's everybody who is studying this, withdrawing from the final conclusion what that is. I am thinking more from this imaginative writer.
Yeah.
Is this possibility that it has something to do with anti-gravitation or something with the quantum physics that we are not able to perceive because we don't see everything with our perception?
Yeah, I mean, why not? But they saw the objects crashing. You could see the sun shining in the hull. They could hear them. They could see smoke sometimes coming out from the rear. So they were real physical objects up until they were starting to looking for them. Then they were completely gone. But that said, we are now, UFO Sweden are now looking for one of those rockets in a lake in the very far north of Sweden called Namajaure. And that rocket landed in front of two witnesses in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
No daylight. It flew over them, turned 180 degrees, coming back towards them, landing on the lake, sinking, with bubbles coming up and vanishing. And that object we have been trying to locate. We have been there twice. It's very difficult. It's in very far north. It's a restricted area because it's a national park.
Mm-hmm.
Not easy to go there. It's quite expensive to do this. And we have located something. We got a radar return of something resting in the mud in the lake. So we are going back again, trying to see if we can find that ghost rocket.
So it's possible that something is still there, and it will take enormous probably work to take it out or investigate more.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Usually the equipment acts a little bit funny around those objects, right? There's this the case, or am I talking about something completely else?
Well, in this case, we can see something in the mud with this ground penetrating radar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nothing strange, really. It's just an ordinary radar return. But we cannot tell exactly how this object looks like. We need another kind of radar to do that. And that we will try to do in the winter when we go with snowmobiles on the ice. And we can look down with a 3D camera and see exactly how it looks like. But you know, in the winter, it's minus 30 degrees and it's pitch black up there. So it's not easy.
Definitely. So is this like your favorite topic, those kind of objects?
In a way it is, because they are very physical. You can see them for a long time. You can hear them crash. You can hear the splash. You can see the water coming up and everything like that. So to me, it's a part of UFO mystery that is very tangible. And I like that. I like when it comes to the hardware point of view. So you really feel this you can find. You can do that.
Is there anything that you can suspect that there is a life? Because you can compare it like the object, and it could be just an object or some sort of object sent from cosmos, considering maybe there are some aliens, just a theory, just to play with it, without people or entities inside. Could it be like that there is nobody inside, or it's just, I don't know, like checking point, like something sends signals to check?
Yeah, it's not a bad thinking at all. I mean, it very much looks like this is unmanned. And it could be someone sending those down the lakes, trying to put something there. Maybe to send a signal, I don't know. But to make some sort of help for someone else who will fly over the next time. I have no idea really, but I mean, you must be able to speculate in this case. For we have so little evidence except witnesses, lots of witnesses, many.
I maybe would jump to another subject, but you always can come back to share a little bit more, because you obviously probably will have. And I just have this connection. How is it, and if it is related to those phenomena that, you know, animals without the blood and rain of birds or fishes, is this related to those incidents?
I mean, the unknown is very broad. I mean, our archives is called Archives for the Unexplained, and there you can find all those animal mutilations, raining fish, UFOs, paranormal entities. You can, I mean, anything and everything, sea monsters.
Mm-hmm. But it's not related, like when those objects are hitting the water, it's not like within a day or two there are fishes, dead fishes, and it's not related.
No, it's
There's
nothing
no
like
relation.
that. It's no connection at all to anything else. Just those flyovers, crashes, and then they are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else really happened around them. So it's a part of the mystery, but it doesn't trigger any other parts of it.
That's interesting, because I would like to ask also, probably you asked it already to people you were investigating and walking around and checking, if they have any change within their health, feelings, something peculiar had happened during that time. It's still the perception of, you know, witness, but nothing particular, or abductions. Like some people claim they were abducted, they have the vivid experience of it, and even trauma after that. So was any of this related to those incidents?
Not really. I mean, the abduction phenomenon started much later, really, even though you can go back in the folklore to read about other kind of abductions. You can read about the people going out in the woods being taken by entities down in mountains or in caves or whatever, and then you stay there for maybe you thought were a couple of days, and you came out and weeks or months or sometimes even years had passed. That kinds of stories you can find in the Swedish folklore as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in being abducted is not something new. It's something that we have just put different labels on.
Yeah.
So I'm very reluctant to say that the abduction phenomenon is something that is connected to aliens or whatever, because you have it in the folklore for hundreds and hundreds of years back with other interpretations, which is as good as aliens. So you must be open. You must be trying to be a neutral investigator, not to put your own feelings or thoughts into the investigation. And that is hard for many people to do that.
Yeah, because naturally you would like to know more, so you're trying to analyze it and put it, just like me already, is it possible this or that? Is it possible that it's a signal from the cosmos? But if there is any life form out there, maybe nobody's coming here. They're just sending the objects for the maybe future, or points that you can know where you are on the planet, or, you know, in the cosmos. I don't know. So it could be anything particular. Do you have any conclusions, particularly yours? Or even if it's theory, even if you're not sure?
I'm not very much into speculating, to be honest. I'm an avid sci-fi reader. I read lots of sci-fi, but that kinds of thoughts for my reading. I mean, I have no answers when it comes to the ghost rockets. I have no answers when it comes to UFOs either. But I know that they are, in some cases, real and physical objects, and that people are meeting what they think are entities, which are, for them, physical as well. I mean, I also interview people that are meeting, let's say, elves trolls, gnomes, and here in Sweden today. So even though we think a lot about UFOs and aliens that have taken over from all those old folklore, it's still with us. Those other kind of entities are also with us, also reported.
That is interesting, because maybe we should have two different topics, or two different approaches toward unidentified objects, and those other entities are taken as UFOs, connected, and when maybe in fact they are not. They are other entities living on Earth, as people say, claim they have these encounters, and they have nothing to do with those objects out there in the sky. They are
absolutely, they could absolutely
inhabitants of Earth.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's very hard to say that all of those entities are connected to UFOs. But to me, the entities, they cannot be separated that easy. They are interpreted by certain people as aliens, gnomes, elves, or whatever. Just what you have with you in your bag, what you have with you in your experience, and then you interpret things from that. So for me as a UFO investigator, it's very, very important to see what kind of background do you have as an observer? What have you read before? What have you grown up with? What kind of stories do you believe in? But that is really painting the picture of what you are telling me later.
Fantastic. When you investigate those people who claim to saw elves, trolls, gnomes, how do you know? Do you believe them? Do you know if they are, maybe imagining that? Is there any guidelines you are following when you do this investigation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. A very hard question as well. Yes, I believe them, but I don't believe that they must have seen a physical thing. Many things are going on inside here as well. And you are not sick because you are experiencing strange things. It's not a sign of sickness. Everyone can do that. But some of the observations are also very, very physical. They could hear steps, they could see traces in the snow afterwards.
So it's happening very physical.
Yeah, I mean, not every time, but I mean, I talked to a guy who just a couple of years ago saw in broad daylight what he called a gnome that was maybe 80 centimeters high, walking out from a barn, walking in front of him, turning and looking at him, saying something, but he never answered. So there were no communication, but then he walked away and he saw the traces in the snow afterwards. And this was not an ordinary man, it was something else, he said to me. So that really rings a bell when it comes to physical entity. It looks like it's something you can feel and taste and hear.
That is so fascinating for me. I would love to explore it more and actually ask you more about those experiences. What did you discover there? Because you're telling that these people have two kinds of experience. One is very physical, when they really have encountered, they even talk with this entity, and one is very internal, so they see it more like some people say astral or dreams, or maybe sense that they close their eyes and feel the entity around.
Yeah, or just they see something, but they don't hear the steps. They don't hear a sound. It's like a parallel universe coming into ours for a short while. I a couple of years ago, quite a few years ago, I made an observation myself of something strange in the sky. It was like 3 illuminated plus signs like this flying over right here where I'm sitting right now. And that was something I felt quite uncomfortable to tell about, even though I was at that time chairman of UFO Sweden. But when I told about it, I got a telephone call from a lady who had heard me on the radio where I told my story. And she told me that she was standing out in a field in the 1930s, waiting for her mother. And suddenly, in broad daylight, 3 illuminated plus signs came out of nowhere, rolling like this on a road not far from her, and suddenly vanishing into nothing, really. Just as something appeared for a couple of seconds, some other, you can call it dimension or whatever you want, something happened and just went away. So I want to say really several things with that. It's important to tell if you are experiencing something yourself, because you get reactions from others.
Yeah.
And tell you. That was very, very good for me to hear that story. And also that things are happening that are not fully understood. We are living in a very physical reality, but that physical reality is not fully understood yet. So much more to explore.
Exactly. We talked about very briefly about this capacity of human brain and about how much we really perceive out there, because what you're just telling about those objects that disappearing somewhere, they are very vivid, very physical, and they are disappearing. There is something we don't see. What's really happening? Because it sounds almost, again, like there is another dimension close to us, maybe another portal dimension. However, is that even possible or not? I don't know. But if we, because there was this saying that we use only 10% of our brain, and you said that is not so, it's a myth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I made a Google search.
Okay.
You can just type it in, 10% myth, and you will find lots of evidence for that it is a myth. And as we mentioned before this broadcast,
Yeah,
that if you just were to use 10% of your brain, you would be a vegetable. You couldn't stay alive. You
okay.
need every part of your brain to stay alive, and you can measure that. I mean, it's easy to measure your brain functions, and you can see it's fully operating 100% all the time. But of course, we are different people are making different use of their brains, of course.
Yeah, because maybe it's about consciousness, awareness, because we have those millions of information every day coming to us. So maybe our brain cannot handle that much at a certain point. So picks, maybe picks those, what is priority, what is 10% of it, or 20, or I don't know how much really. And there is this saying, if you don't know about something, you don't believe in something, or you just, it's not in your mental dictionary, you may not see it, and another witness will perceive that. Yeah. So maybe that's about that we do not have this internal muscle to recognize maybe another dimension, maybe a portal, something what is out there. Is that, I'm speculating. I know you don't like that already, but I wish to know more a little bit what is really the truth, why we don't see those objects anymore. They coming for a little bit, then they disappearing. How to find them?
Yeah, but of course there are observations with hundreds of witnesses as well that see the same thing. But we are very lousy witnesses. UFO Sweden are giving a field investigator trainee course every year since the middle of the 1970s. And one of the most important things that we are telling, and I'm giving that course, it's about misinterpretations. What you can really see in the sky, but misinterpret as something else. And I made so many interviews with people that I know for sure. And if you have 2 witnesses, you have 2 different stories. Because we are very bad on
very.
To tell what report you can have witnesses telling that blue car smashed into a red one. Another one say that it was green. It never hit the other car at all.
Right. That was like a basic research in the social psychology. That's how bad our perception can be.
Yeah. That's sad. I mean, for a UFO investigator to have just one witness is really to have no witness at all. in a way. You have a good story, but you have nothing to substantiate it with. That is the problem. And UFO Sweden, we have a rule that to be stamped as a UFO observation, you must be 2 witnesses.
That say the same thing.
Yeah. So it's quite hard. It's quite tough. Not many UFO groups around the world is that tough when it comes to how we label a UFO. But that said, I mean, I met so many people that I trust that have seen strange things that I believe, even though they really are a lone witness. I have one witness from 1988 who was standing out fishing. It was in broad daylight, and he heard a sound like a something like that. He looked around and he didn't see anything, but then he looked up, and then he saw an object like a diamond falling from the sky, steep angle, and he thought this will crash into the lake in front of me. But just before it hit the lake, it turned 90 degrees, like started to fly along the lake, avoiding a couple of high power lines, turning a couple of times to avoid some trees, and then vanishing. And after that, he heard a sound again, and he felt like, I can't be here anymore. He sat down on a stone for a while, and then he walked from there, and he couldn't stay there anymore. And I met him a couple of times.
Did he feel something? He couldn't stand there anymore. What do you mean by that?
He
felt it weird, or?
Yeah, he was so, he wasn't frightened really, but the sound was something that he couldn't really put his finger on. It was not natural. It was something, it was scary, but he was not scared, but he felt that he was drained. So he went away. And this guy I met 3 times, 1 time at home and 2 times at the very spot on his stories. And he tells the same story every time. And I believe him. He's a single UFO witnesses. But yeah.
Yeah, it's not enough. It's a single witness.
It's not enough, but it's a very, very intriguing story. And I tend to believe that he really experienced this as he tells it.
I will go back one more time because that reminds me of this UFO connected with government, those objects. Did government state anything that they received some technology from entities, from communication? Did they ever say something that they communicated actually from somebody, some entities that were related to those unidentified objects?
I've interviewed quite a few military personnel who has been investigating UFOs, and no one has ever told me anything like that. And I also read every single of those thousands and thousands of documents from the 1930s up till now, and there is nothing in there as well. So I don't think so. I think the Swedish military, they don't really know. They have no clue what those things are. They were quite good at identifying stuff in the 1950s especially, and 60s. But there were also quite a few observations left, even for them, that they could not identify. So to them, the UFOs were a problem. It created a defense problem. I mean, there could be something that intruded into our airspace that they really didn't know what it was. But it wasn't dangerous.
Because if you don't know what kind of technology can do that, then what are you,
absolutely. But they never went that extra mile. They stopped there and said, we don't know what it is and we cannot do anything much about it. So we
stopped their research, you're saying?
Well, they didn't put that extra effort into that. They really put a lot of effort into investigating UFOs for many, many years. But it never gave them any new knowledge.
But they never shut it down, like, we're not going to do that anymore. They didn't shut it down, they just didn't give attention because
Yeah, but now, a couple of years ago, they shut it down. They are referring all UFO observations to UFO Sweden now. So if you call the military and say that you have seen something, they will refer that call to UFO Sweden. So now they don't
Okay.
anymore.
That sounds fair.
Yeah.
Because there was also, maybe that's also speculation about shutting down a certain project that may be not ethical. It depends on different research. And later on, some of the people probably were saying, you know, this Area 51, the projects are still going on and it's bad. So it actually sounds very fair if they are directing those cases to you now. So it's pretty open approach.
It is.
I like that.
I went to Area 51 a couple of years ago, but
did you go there?
Yeah, well, as near as you can, of course.
Sure, you were not going underground.
No. Okay. I was standing there at the gates. There are two different gates. I was standing there looking at the guards. They were looking at me with their binoculars and those surveillance cameras and all that stuff. But it's an intriguing place. I mean, if you go to Rachel, which is a little community where everyone goes to, Little Ale Inn, the restaurant where everyone goes, and have flying saucer burger and have a chat with guys there. You get so many stories, of course, but people living in Rachel have seen and heard a lot of things that are flying over or whatever. So it's worth going there, I think, even though you cannot see much, but it was nice to have done that trip.
I want to ask, what stories did you hear there?
Yeah, I met an American former military man who told me about, in the 1960s he was stationed at the border between Germany and Czechoslovakia at that point. And one night they were all woken up by the officer who said that we will be in great trouble because something has flown over us now, and we were not able to stop it. We were not able to identify it. And it emerged that this object had traveled so fast, I think it was 6 times the speed of sound or something like that, that they couldn't even pinpoint it with their radar. It was just one or couple of blips and then disappeared. And they were stationed there to shoot things like that down, because at that point, of course, the Cold War, and everything was flying from east into Germany were considered to be hostile. And they were there to shoot that down, and they couldn't because it was too fast. That was the story he told me.
Yeah, you know, with all these mysteries are actually like an invitation for speculation.
Yeah.
There's this invitation, because if the military is shooting those objects down and you don't know what they are for, are they to attack you, or are they to protect you, or to protect humans from humans? That was another speculation.
Yeah.
Considering atomic bombs, that they are there to protect humans, from them to do something stupid again, being alarmed somewhere there in the cosmos. There was some story like that. Considering one more, well, I'm coming back to the speculation thing.
That's your thing.
Yes, but maybe it's good, because then you always say something more realistic and from the different perspective, how to look at those stories, because some of the people were saying, or there's like a lot of information on the internet, that maybe governments, or some of the governments, maybe USA government, were having contact with alien race or somebody there, and they got in exchange for something alien technology, because those UFOs that were those pictures of objects are different from 60s, 70s, and they are different now. They look more cool, fancy. So what's going on with that?
I mean, if there were aliens from other planets coming here to protect ourselves from ourselves, one must wonder, why don't they make a proper contact and tell us that they are here? that's not really logical. Coming here in disguise, trying to save humanity.
I heard we are experiment. I hope not.
I mean, John Keel wrote a book called Disneyland of the Gods, and he put forward that thought that we could be just a Disneyland, an experiment for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, do I think that? No, I don't. I don't think that. I think we are here as a result of the evolution.
Mm-hmm.
If there are another entity coming here from the cosmos, there must be more. It couldn't just be two. There must be many, of course. And why would I like to save humanity? We are just a speck of small point of light in the cosmos that doesn't really matter to anyone. It's far and between, probably, between the stars that have inhabited planets.
Because why planet Earth would be so interesting than everybody else? That's a good question. Why they would be even interested or fight or destroy or use or some resources. Yeah, there were also stories, concepts like that those aliens between aliens are at war and something like that, and we get those objects because there is a war between them.
Internet is a vast story machine.
Right.
To be able to know what is true and not true, you need to have knowledge. And you need not to sit just looking at those strangest channels, the strangest websites. You need to talk with someone who really knows anything about something. I mean, you need to know. I know lots of researchers and scientists, and that I'm very glad that I do that. I can always talk with them and get another view and put me down on Earth if I suddenly should be floating away like a balloon, which I hope I don't that often.
But that's a good tip. That's a good tip because the concepts are really fantastic stories, and I love stories. But you said something about the way how to differentiate what is true, what is not, and what is the speculation, but we don't know for sure. And because you have knowledge, because you investigate, because you know these people, it's easier for you, obviously, but for somebody else, there are also people who claim they are channelers, they are channeling entities, or they are psychics, and other people. Internet does the work very well right now. So if people say I can heal any sickness, or I can do this, or I can see, or I have a contact with Pleiadians, or whatever it is, like there's one of those famous ladies, Barbara Marciniak. She's actually saying and she's believing in that, and maybe it's true. I cannot tell what is the truth. How the investigator, how could we better approach and differentiate to navigate safely between all this vast information, or
Well, rule number one: read books about other topics than UFOs. I read a lot of science books. I'm a natural scientist from the beginning. I mean, I studied that in school, and I'm an amateur astronomer, which is very good when it comes to ufology, of course. Try to make experiments. I mean, and challenge those people. If they tell that you could be healed, well, show me. Yeah. If you're in contact with reptilians, well, yeah, show me. I mean, I'm meeting those people as well. I'm in contact with so many people here in Sweden that have contacts with otherworldly beings. But the problem with all that is that all of those have no connections in between them. They are making
them.
Yeah, they have contacts that are unique. So hundreds and hundreds of different races coming from all the cosmos, only here in Sweden, which is strange. You would think that you could find a common denominator, which it's very hard to see. But I listen to them, and I am also in contact with a person who is one of the rulers of the universe. I mean, he's 12 people who rules our universe.
Okay.
I met with him for hours and hours. He has an ordinary job. He's an ordinary guy with very extraordinary stories.
Did I understand that properly? You met with someone who claims to rule the universe with other 12 entities?
Yeah, absolutely. And he travels to those meetings several times a week to do that. So, I mean, where should you stop and say, this is too much? Is it okay to meet a reptilian? Is it okay to meet an ET? Is it okay to be a ruler of the universe? I mean, where is the line you should draw in the sand? I mean, I'm listening to all of those. And
but when you encounter him... Sorry, because I got so curious about it, because you meet regular guy who's claiming he's a ruler of the universe, and you have a decent conversation with him. So he's not like schizophrenic or insane or something that would be considered as a case for, mental.
Absolutely. It's not an asylum case at all. He's a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've been around in this topic for so many years now, so I've met so many people, of course, and I'm still waiting for them to show me so that I can believe them full.
Mm-hmm.
That is the problem. I have so many good stories, and I'm listening to them, but I need some more little tiny proof, maybe. I mean, I met with another guy who was traveling to other planets regularly here in Sweden. He also got machinery, he got stuff to bring back.
Mm-hmm.
Never showed me anything except a couple of stones. And those stones looks like exactly any stone you can find on the beach in Germany or Sweden, wherever. Those machines he got, he never showed me. And he had to give them back. I had them for a short while, then give them back. I mean, it's a little frustrating, isn't it?
It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating because, of course, if somebody tells you, okay, there is a real machine, you would hope a little bit more. If you hear from somebody, I had a vision, then we just talk about the vision. You cannot have a proof from that. I had a little bit differentiation because some people claim they see ghosts. They see those entities. So everything is mental. It's in a vision, whether they see them by eyes or mentally. So I was thinking former times, like you mentioned this idea that you needed two witnesses of the same event. So former times I was thinking, if I experience something and other psychic experience the same thing in the same place with me, then maybe we are right. So I was trying to investigate the topic of I started simply with ghosts, to be in the same apartment with someone, and I was hearing a ghost, and I was asking the other one, what do you see in your mind? And we were connecting the stories, because otherwise I'm just imagining things.
Yeah.
But even then, you cannot be 100% true, because you would have to find another ruler of the universe. So maybe you can invite these other guys who are ruling and then see if their story fits.
I should be a little more, let me say like this. I know another guy as well, who is also traveling out in the universe on a regular basis, also here in Sweden. And he says that he meets other Swedish persons that he knows, and they are meeting in those dreamlike states.
Okay.
So there we may be able to substantiate something, but I have not been able to meet those other guys yet, which is the problem, of course.
I am interested if you ever want to investigate that. That's very, that would be something, I think. I don't know how you can see that from the perspective of an investigator, because you need a real material, but I am very familiar with the dreaming state too. And a number of things when the only proof that I have is when someone comes in my dreams and tells me something, I call that person and tell me this and this and this. And then some of the people are really surprised because they were about to tell me that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've written a book about stuff like that a couple of years ago. And that's intriguing.
Yeah.
It is, absolutely. And that said, I mean, a single witness is, of course, not always wrong.
But I cannot prove it.
Yeah. But I mean, of course, a single witness can also experience and see things that are for real. I mean, it's better with two. But
Yeah,
I mean, we are not discarding people just because they are alone. But to be labeled an observation that we can say this is for real, we need to. And what you are telling, I heard so many stories like that, even here in Sweden as well. So the human mind is something that so much more has to be investigated to see what really ticks in here for us.
Yeah, it could be just, need some more research in concept of telepathy, because more and more people coming forward with that, and they actually are familiar with it, taking it something normal. But some people say you can develop it, like a remote viewing institute. We have that in Germany here, and they claim they actually can see on a distance what's in there, and they have 10 or number of people that are doing those views. So of course, I don't know anybody from there, so I cannot really check, but I'm interested in those kind of research too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our archive is not just about UFOs, it's about all the paranormal stuff that you're telling me about now, and so many other things. So we are very open. We are listening to everyone, and we really are not discarding anyone. We want those people to tell us a story so we can at least save them for the future, which is also important.
Did you hear about numbers of stories? Because what I'm hearing, maybe I should share that with you so you can tell it from your perspective, and you probably heard more people like that. Some people claim they hear vividly. They call the aliens as a race, by race. So reptiles or reptilians, I don't know, Anunnaki, or those Pleiadians, or like the West. There is this Arcturian race. So they claim they have contact with them. Did you have any people like that they claim it?
Absolutely. Very many people here in Sweden as well. Many, but maybe 50 or 100 people that claims that they are in contact with entities of different races. But the word is claim, of course. I mean, it's very hard for them to prove, or they don't want to prove it. I mean, it would be quite easy to get something from those entities, you would think, that you could test in a laboratory or whatever.
Exactly. If so many people have those contact, why all of them, they cannot question themselves together, come together, say, hey, I see this race, me too, let's check it out, what that is.
Yeah, that's strange. It is strange. And that may tell us a little about what's the bottom line of this. It's maybe something going on inside of us that are something inside us humans. We are not really sure why it is triggered to show itself in this way. I believe in the observations, but I don't believe that everything is just outside us. Maybe very much inside us as well.
That's another interesting point, because some people are believing so much, they have no doubts, and they say if you don't have doubts, then you are on the right track. But then there is this limit how far you go into fanaticism of what you believe. Without investigating, without questioning, because that is part of the science, to check what you're really seeing, or check even entities you are talking to. Is this friendly entities, or is it trying to trick you, for example?
Absolutely. I mean, if you open yourself to anything can happen to you as well.
Exactly.
Not always good.
Well said. Another people who are claiming whether they are hybrids, they claim they have some alien DNA within themselves, or they are taken to spaceships to become, whether there is this another they call project, I actually forgot, so maybe somebody will be so kind to remind me here under the video right later. They are taken to give birth to a hybrid babies.
We have the same stories from
Did you hear that?
1600s to 1700s, when you were taken by entities out in the woods, you were giving birth to their childs, and you were breeding an other entity's child. I mean, those stories are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and that now they are just put into a more technical costume, as far as I see it. So I'm not sure that this is really for real. It's a real tradition of stories that a small part of our of humanity really carries with us from generation to generation. It would be quite easy to test the DNA on anyone to see if that is true, really. But, well, we are still waiting for that DNA test to come.
Okay, who would like to be first, please? Send a sample, not to us, but to laboratory, if you have any connection with that. So I would like to touch on, if you don't mind, on the one more subject. You wrote a book about it, cults connected with UFOs. Can you comment on that? Because that's actually a very dangerous topic.
I mean, there are lots of cults around the world, and some of them are really out after your life, really. That it will end in a disaster if you're not leaving the cult early on. I mean, there have been several cults with mass suicides. And one of them, the most well-known UFO cult, was Heaven's Gate. That started in 1974. It was two persons, Marshall Herf Applewhite and Bonnie Lou Nettles, who met. They were in the same prison together. And when they, good start. And when they came out, they gave lectures together. They were giving like the Eric von Däniken type of lectures, that they were coming entities from another planet here to Earth thousands of years ago, and now they are coming back. And they were so persuasive. They gave a talk in a small town in the US. They came, I think, 250 people to the meeting, and maybe around 20 of them went with those guys. They left everything. They went with them the other day when they left town. And they followed them for years and years and years, up till 1997, March 1997. Then Bonnie Lou Nettles, she was dead. She had had cancer and she passed away. But Marshall Herf Applewhite, he knew that she was coming back in a spaceship. And he could prove it with a picture of the comet Hale-Bopp. Hale-Bopp was a very, very nice flashing comet. I saw it myself with my family. It was so prominent out in the night skies, you couldn't miss it. And behind that comet, there was a spaceship traveling with Bonnie Lou Nettles and those space aliens. And now his cult, his Heaven's Gate cult, were to travel there. So they packed their stuff. They had some dimes for calling back home in their bags. They had those Nike trainers on them, and they committed suicide during 3 days. 39 people were taking poison and flying from their bodies up to this spaceship.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, why do you do that? How can you persuade 38 other people to do that?
What kind of charisma and manipulative skills or believing in your story you have to have within yourself?
It's really strange. It's hard to understand for us. I mean, they went to Disneyland the day before, had pizza, had a nice time, went back to their home and started to kill themselves. It's incomprehensible in so many ways. And they had this web page where you can see it said Heaven's Gate. Hale-Bopp brings closure to Heaven's Gate. Nobody really understood it at that time, but they said to the world that we are going to leave. Now Hale-Bopp is closing down Heaven's Gate. After all of those years, we are traveling.
Well, they told the truth.
They told the
they
truth.
left.
Absolutely.
That's true. That's the evidence here.
The problem is to listen to a leader to lead that manipulate your mind. I've studied so many cults, and you can see how easy it is for everyone, not just for strange people or other people, but to you and me. Certain circumstances is so manipulated, so turned around, that you can start believing in so many strange things that you cannot really comprehend it. It goes quite fast. It takes just a couple of weeks, and then you start turning, and there is no way back for many of those people after just months.
Yeah, that actually reminds me a little bit about some of the governments and people the same way, not knowing exactly what is the truth, but being so programmed in it. And the cult already have a very strict agenda. They know what they are doing on the top. But in a normal cases, even if people are maybe not that much aware, even in relationships, it's happening in small groups of organizations, right? And so-called governments. Do you have any conclusions about for the people who are victims of the cult?
Well, I don't see that many people that you can call victims here in Sweden, really. Most of the people we meet here are just experiencers that have seen something. They are not stopped or gagged by the government or something like that. They're just gagged by themselves, really. They are, I mean, a couple of years ago, we knocked doors. We in UFO Sweden, we went to different places around Sweden, and we knocked and asked people, have you seen anything strange in the sky that you have not been able to identify? And we talked to 1,600 people. And out of that group, every 10th people had seen something strange that they didn't know, and never really reported it to the government or to us or to anyone else. They just kept silent because it was so strange to them. And that means that 1 in 10 in Sweden, that means 1 million, we are 10 million here, million Swedes are carrying stories that we are still waiting to listen to, because we have around 20,000 UFO reports in UFO Sweden's files. That's nothing. It's quite many, really, but it's nothing. If 1 million are still out there with their stories.
Okay, perhaps we should do some sort of announcement here that if somebody there have similar stories and as much as precise and would like to share, let me know, right? Write to me, and we're gonna go from there, because I'm very much interested in that, and I would like to also know what is the truth here, because there are so many people, they have experience, and I cannot deny their experience.
No, absolutely.
And I don't want to, because they really have the vivid reaction, what it does to them, especially those, traumatizing stories when something really happens.
Yeah. You must take them seriously. That's very important, because they are in a situation that is very hard for them. They may have nobody to tell. They may feel very, very solitary. It's good to have someone to tell their story to. And I mean, we are listening, even though we are investigators. We are listening there to persuade them to think anything else, really.
Exactly, because maybe you can also connect them with other people who have something similar. So the case study could be started from there. So you have at least several people experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, if there is something that's happened a certain day, now we are trying to get out on Facebook and see, did you see anything in this part of Sweden on this particular date? And get other reports and other people who can validate what other people have already told us.
All right. If I get somebody send me something, I will forward it to you. I have one more question for today. What is the direction of your archives of Unexplained going? What is now the goal? Because you're connecting it, but maybe there is something specific.
First, I want to show the book I wrote about the archives, Files of the Unexplained. It's about what we are doing, and I can send you a link. This book can be bought from our website, and all the money goes to the archives, so nothing goes to me.
Wow. That's what it is. So nobody can buy it on Amazon, I suppose.
No, you cannot buy it on Amazon yet. You can buy it directly through afu.se, Archives for the Unexplained.se. But you asked me about the direction we are going, and if you see this book, you can see it's about so many things. It's about ghosts and UFOs and sea monsters, and here we have Flat Earth Society's chairman once, Charles K. Johnson. I met him in the desert in 1980. And he told me, can you see how flat it is? He said, I can do that, I can do that. Well, what we are looking forward right now is a huge donation from the United States. We had one in October last year. 1,000 kilos were sent to us. It was
kilos.
1,000 kilos was sent to us.
You are not asking donation in case of money, but in the kilos. So that's kind of a donation.
We would love the money as well, but people are very, well, they want to use their money for other purposes, maybe I could say. We would love the money, but we are mostly getting books and files and magazines, pictures, tapes, whatever. So what we got in October was the late Wendell Stevens files, part of it at least. And now we're waiting for another donation, a smaller one, just a couple of 100 kilos coming. But I will go down to the south of Sweden shortly to pick up a huge library from a parapsychologist who passed away a year ago. That we will bring back to AFU, and it's huge. I mean, AFU is now 550 square meters. It's 3 kilometers of bookshelves, 3,000 meters.
Like a TV show warehouse.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Hangar 1 TV,
sci-fi.
That's fiction. I mean, that's not
of course.
reality. We are the largest in the world, and we are also the best in the world, would I say. We are scanning all the time. We are helping researchers all around the world, all the time. And today, before I met you, I was sitting and downloading files from a guy in Germany who helped us with loads of documents that we are now saving at AFU. And it's a wonderful task. I mean, we do this for our own money. We're putting our own time and money into this because we love it. And it's so important to save the stories, the pictures, everything else for posterity, and to help researchers now and in the future to understand those very, very strange topics that we are discussing today. I mean, to understand all this, you need the documents, the books, everything.
Absolutely. I advise every one of us to dig deeper and find the documentation and read books. And I probably would borrow some of your books already. Maybe some of them are already in online PDF. Could that be possible? Or is that already possible? Like people can borrow books online in PDF format? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you right now you can only buy this as a physical book if we send it.
Okay.
But it will probably be a PDF download alternative in the future. But right now we need to cover the costs for the printing first, and it's more money through a physical book. And I think we are nearly there to cover all the costs now. So we'll see. But it's a good read. It's a fantastic archive, and you will, after reading it, you will think, wow, does this really exist? And it does.
So after the lockdown, I think I know my next destination. I have to call my travel agent. Just a joke. But I would love to see a lot. I would love to hear a lot more, but I think for today we are going to close it down, this interview, for a first time. And if any of you want to hear more stories, let me know. Please comment under the video, and I will get back to Clas for more. Thank you so much for sharing today with us.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Take care and have a good day, night, everyone. Bye-bye.